Hello there. My name is Father Ed Nadonley from the Father Nadonley Good News Fund. And the program today is You're My Guest. So I'd love to hear from you. What you always want to ask a priest, we're afraid to ask. Here's your chance to call me at 860-321-7405 and ask any question, because I have all kinds of questions for you to answer. So we'd love to have you be, if you can't stay for the whole hour, just stay for 55 minutes. If you can't stay for 55 minutes, stay for a half hour. If you can't stay, just call anyways, because we'd love to hear from you. So there's all kind of topics that you'd like to hear from, I'm sure. Well, I've been working in the hospital for the last 6 weeks on Sundays and Mondays. And it's been a great experience for me to visit all these patients. Somebody said, Father, where's the chapel? And I said, well, which chapel are you talking about? Are you talking about the chapel where the Blessed Sacrament is, where we say Mass? Or we talk about the suffering chapel? And each room, each patient, to me, that's a little chapel, because it's a suffering chapel. There's a phrase that I like. It says, Jesus did not come to explain away suffering or remove suffering. Jesus didn't come to explain away suffering or to remove suffering, but he came to fill it with his presence, to fill it with his presence. So that when somebody said to me, Father, where's the chapel? I said, which chapel? The chapel of the Blessed Sacrament where I say Mass, or the suffering chapel? Because Jesus said he didn't come to explain away suffering. He didn't come to remove suffering, but he came to fill it with his presence. So wherever there's suffering, there's a tremendous amount of presence of God. So we talk about the Blessed Sacrament Chapel, and we have the Suffering Chapel. So maybe I'd ask you a question. Of all the sufferings that you had to go through, or the sufferings that you're going through right now, what are some of the sufferings, the problems that you have in your life, in your family? Call me at 860-321-7405. Is it financial suffering? Like somebody can't pay the rent? They call me on my billboards, Father, could you help me with my rent? Would it be a physical suffering? Like the fellow that I saw today at the hospital, he was the last one I saw. And he was very down. He was a young fella. He says, I said, what's the matter? He says, I get panic attacks and I have cirrhosis of the liver. So you put both two together. He drinks to get rid of panic attacks, and the panic attacks encourage him to drink. So he's hurting in both places. The sclerosis of the liver because of drinking, and he's also suffering because of panic attacks. And I tell him how I handle my panic attacks. Maybe you could give me your example. This morning, I lost my key to get into the seminary. I lost that, and I lost my telephone. I left it in my room. So I'm outside the seminary and trying to get into the place because it's locked down. And I couldn't get out. I had to walk around and I was having a panic attack. But it came to me, well, will you be upset about this a week from now? No. And you can't do everything, but you can do something. You can go around the front of the seminary and touch it. And that helped me. Will I be upset about this a week from now, that panic attack? So I told him how I said to him, that's the way I handle my panic attacks. He just looked at me. I guess it wasn't strong enough an argument. And the other one is, well, so what? Your attitude. Instead of panicking, say, oh, so what? Big thing, no great deal. I think the words that you use help you with your panic attack. So I finally got into the seminary, and somebody found my keys, and I went into my room and I got my phone and went to the hospital. But I felt sorry for that fella who has panic attacks. He's got cirrhosis of the liver. He's dying from the liver problem. And the panic attack, I don't know where that came from, but something happened to him in his childhood. So the Lord says, I did not come to explain away suffering. I did not come to remove suffering, but I came to fill it with my presence. That's why I think when you talk about a chapel, it's not just a chapel where our Lord is in the Blessed Sacrament, but also where our Lord is in the suffering of each person. And there's so many. I probably anointed maybe, probably 600 people that were sick. Sometimes when I come into the room, they think, I'm dying. That doesn't do well on my self-image. And I asked them, well, I'm here to not for you to die, I'm here to ask God to heal you. And I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. The lady went to Lourdes, and she had 4th stage cancer. And she went to Lourdes, and she washed in the waters of Lourdes, and she came back, and she's completely cured of her 4th stage cancer. And this priest who was having supper with her and her family a couple nights ago told me about the miracle, the physical miracle. But the healing, when you give the sacrament to the sick, they call it the last sacrament. Not because somebody, I came into the room and he said, am I dying? Am I getting the last sacrament? I said, yeah, you're getting the last sacrament. But it doesn't mean for the dying. It means that it's baptism, confession, communion, confirmation, marriage, holy orders, and the sacrament sick, the 7th sacrament. So it's the last sacrament. That's why we call it the last sacrament. It's not because anybody's dying. So if anybody has any problem, some suffering that they're going through, we're talking about suffering tonight, give me a call at 860-321-7405. And you see that number on the, that's my number, that's my prison number. When I go to prison, they give me that number. I have to wear that number. But right now, I'm wearing it for you. And during these times that I've been in the hospital, I've had a lot of spiritual miracles. You know, I'll go into a room, I'll anoint somebody with the sacrament of the sick, or the last sacrament. Then I'll ask them, do you want to go to communion? And they say, no. I said, that's because you haven't gone to confession for 30 years. No, it's not true, only 25 years. Or you haven't gone to confession for 50 years. No, it's only been 40 years. And it's amazing how many times when you make it easy for them to go to confession. I said, God's got the grocery list, but I only have a desire to know if you're sorry for your sins. And 99% of them say they're sorry, and they go to confession, then they go to Holy Communion. I have two cases. One, you can't go into a person's room unless he's on the chart, a Catholic. And then you could go in, and they'll say come in or not come in. So I walked into the room accidentally, and I apologized to the fellow. I said, this happened a couple of days ago. Today's what, Monday? This happened last Sunday. And I went in, and I said, gee, I apologize that I came into the wrong room. But because I'm inquisitive, I said, by the way, are you Catholic? He said, yeah, I'm Catholic. But I haven't gone to confession for 50 years. I said, why did you leave the church? He said, he gave me 2 reasons. And I said, is that all? That's 2 reasons why you're not going to church? I have about 1,500 reasons why I shouldn't go to church. I call them parishioners. And I have about 5 bishops that I could use an excuse for not going to church. But I don't go to church for a priest or a parishioner. I go to church for Christ. And I asked him, do you believe that piece of bread is really the Eucharist? And if it's really Christ? And he said, yes. So before I left, I heard his confession after 50 years. I anointed him with the sacrament of sick, and I also gave him Holy Communion. So when you look at the question of suffering, I said, Jesus does not explain away suffering. He does not remove suffering, but he fills it with his presence. That's why I think every room in the hospital is a little chapel. That's where the suffering of Christ is there. He's present in your suffering. So if you'd like to call me, 860-321-7405. 860-321-7405. And give me is there any suffering that you're going through? Is it physical, mental, emotional, financial, family, children, grandchildren? And one of the things I find are how many parents and godparents And grandparents are disappointed in their children because they brought them up in a religion, a certain religion, and like in the Catholic religion, and then all of a sudden they stopped going to church, and they gave up going to church. And it's very hard. That's a tremendous suffering when you see a mother or a grandmother very discouraged because none of the children go to church. And with the billboards, I get a lot of that. I get people calling me all the time. Somebody called me just a couple of days ago and said, we just found the bones of Jesus. I said, well, they're pretty old. I don't think bones could last over 2,000 years unless they're put in a refrigerator. Somebody else will call me and said, right in the middle of the night, and say, Father, I'm depressed. And I said, could you call me at 10 o'clock instead? Or I like this one, the one that called me and said, Father, I'm with my boyfriend. Would you marry me? And I said, you're not my type, but I marry them later on. I've got a one billboard on 691 in Meriden. It says, Jesus, forgive me. And that one, it's surprised how many calls I get from that, where people call and they're in distraught. One had an abortion. The other one calls me up and she says, I committed adultery. Another one called me up and said, I committed adultery. So I get calls from all over the state. But it's sad when you get a call from somebody who's just had an abortion and all of a sudden she realizes what she's done and she has to live with it. And I had one recently. I'll drink to that. I had one recently call me up, and she told me that she remembers the day that she was conceived. She remembers the day she had the abortion. And those days come to her every year. She remembers that the time of conception where the DNA is separate from the DNA of a mother. DNA indicates that this is a separate being with the potential of becoming fully human. And now she has to carry that cross the rest of her life. And I know a lot of people, the suffering they have, the suffering that comes after the abortion. The abortion will give you that moment of relief. I'm not pregnant. I'm not carrying a child. But then, because you've got that natural motherly instinct, that settles in as time goes on. And when we're talking about different sufferings, one of the sufferings that people have is the suffering of sin, the suffering of abortion. So the question is, are you going under any type of suffering right now in your life? Just call me at 860-321-7405. 860-321-7405. I brought something I've never done before, and these are little stories that are, there's a story of, here's one, but Jesus says, I can be a fire. I would like to share with you a poem called, Who Do I Believe? The world tells me I'm only a spark. But Jesus tells us, I can be a fire. The world tells me I'm only a string. But Jesus said, I can be a lyre. The world tells me that I'm only an anthill. But Jesus says, I can be a mountain. The world tells me I'm only a drop. But Jesus tells me I am a fountain. The world tells me I'm only a feather. But Jesus says, I am a wing. The world tells me I'm only a beggar. But Jesus says, I can be a king. Yeah, we're talking about the suffering of low self-image. And that's a beautiful idea of the suffering of, we're talking about suffering of abortion, physical suffering, mental suffering. And when you think about the suffering of a low self-image, I go around all the time, and I turn around and I ask if you can. Okay, let me check. There's a phone call. I just don't see it. You're on the air with Father Ed.
Yes, you had a rough start this morning. Did the rest of the day pick up and look better?
Well, yeah, I panicked. I was telling people how I panicked when I lost my key to get into the cemetery. I would get into the cemetery.
No, not to the cemetery.
Well, I felt I was in a cemetery.
Oh.
So I couldn't get into the cemetery. And then I forgot my phone because I need the phone when I go to the hospital because I could get the other chaplains will call me because I'm the only priest in the hospital. They'll call me somebody's dying or somebody needs to be anointed immediately. And I get those. So I had a little panic attack, but then I said to myself, will I be worried about this a week from now? So why worry about it now? So eventually I dropped my keys right near the elevator, and luckily somebody was near the elevator and picked it up. So I was worried about getting late to the hospital, but she didn't have my sheet, the people I had to visit. And because I visited so many people on Sunday, I had a much smaller number of people coming. Yeah, my philosophy is, will I be worried about this a week from now? And that kind of handles my panicky. Because everybody gets panicky. I was telling people on TV today how I met a man who suffers from panic attacks, and also he tries to solve it by drinking. So now he's got a liver problem, sclerosis of the liver. So yeah, but technically with my panic attacks, they don't last very long. But I made a lot of people panicky, I'm sure, throughout my life.
Like, where is he? What's up? What's going on here? All right, well then, you sound like you're ready for some one-liners. Do you have any?
What if I
give you a test? Yes.
You're closer to the tomb than you are to the womb. You better shape up.
What does that mean? Translate.
Well, I'm 87. I'm closer to the tomb than I am to the womb when I was born 87 years ago. And then there's, you better shape up before you ship out. And that's what I tell people. I say that to people who are thinking about, they're thinking about their life. And when I was on a retreat, 30-day retreat, the people said, what are you coming here for? Well, I said, I'm closer to the tomb than I am to the womb, and I need to shape up before I ship out. And the one I read this morning about Jesus did not come to take away suffering, but Jesus, let's see how this said. It sounded pretty good when I read it. It's here. Let's see. It's the wrong paper. That's why. Wait a minute. Time out.
Okay. We're not going anywhere.
Jesus did not come to explain away suffering or remove suffering, but he came to fill it with his presence. I like that one. Jesus did not come to explain away suffering and remove suffering, but he came to fill it with his presence. And I gave the example of somebody asked me, where's the chapel today at the hospital? And I said, which chapel are you talking about? The Blessed Sacrament Chapel or the chapel of suffering where Christ is? Because Christ is present in every patient's room. Because he says, I did not come to explain away suffering or remove suffering, but he came to fill it up with his presence. And to me, every patient's room is a little chapel because God is present in that suffering. I like that. Then I came up with I read a new one, but I can't remember it. But I'll do the best I can. Listening is the currency for friendship. Listening is the currency for friendship. If you want to have develop friendships, you need to pay off. And the payoff, the currency, is listening. So listening is currency for the friendship. And I apply that to God. Listening to God is the currency for developing a friendship with God. But if you don't listen, you're not paying off anything for that friendship with God. I like that one. And when I think of all the people that I come in contact with, I give out these little crosses, and I say, "Are you nice?" And they look at me, and they look at me weird. The nurses, the doctors, the workers, the patients, they don't know how to answer that. So I said, "Are you nice?" I was at a restaurant tonight before I came here. I bought some soup at this new restaurant right near the Nutmeg TV. So the three waitresses, or the maitre d', whatever you call her, they're standing there. I said, "Are you nice?" And one said, "I guess so." I said, "You got to work on your self-image." And the other one, "Are you nice?" She said, "Yeah." And then I said, "Well, this is the first time I'm in this restaurant, and I don't know what kind of food you have, so could I have soup?" So I gave them all crosses. So at the end, I wanted to pay, so they didn't charge me for the soup. I think I'll go back there more often. But I dropped a tip for him. So those are some of the quotes that I have that I like. But another one's, "Lord, I love you more today than yesterday, less today than tomorrow." I love that quote. And another one I like is, "Your love and your grace is enough for me. Your love and your grace is enough for me." Another one I have, "Jesus, I love you, I adore you, and thank you." Because we don't spend much time thanking. So those, I use that in my prayer life. I love you, I adore you, and I thank you. And your love and your grace is enough for me. So some of the ones I have. But my one-liners come as a response to something that happens. You know, it's snow in hell before that happens, you know?
Right.
So these come spontaneously. I can't tell jokes.
And every kick?
Every kick is every kick in the ass is a step forward. Well, I shouldn't say that. Every kick is a step forward.
Every kick in the behind.
Okay, well, you clean up. Well, that's good. Okay, any other questions for me before we move on?
Yes. You had in the mail Connecticut March for Life. What is that?
Oh, that's on tax day, April 15th. You know, like we had the National March for Life in Washington around January 22nd, 23rd. Each state is trying to have a March for Life. So that's going to be on April 15th, tax day, so you can remember it then, at 11 o'clock at the Capitol in Hartford. And we're hoping that people of all backgrounds, Muslims, Methodists, atheists, Catholics, anybody who is pro-life, to come and promote pro-life. Because now we're talking in Connecticut about euthanasia. And euthanasia is taking place right now because the doctors or nurses pump them with morphine, and that takes them out right away. Like one nurse came into the house when an elderly person was there, so she pumped them with morphine and said, "Done." In other words, the person's done. And I hate it when the doctor says, "We'll bring the family around, and we'll have the person will die at 2 o'clock in the afternoon." It's like having a C-section. The baby, you're telling the mother, "Well, we'll have the C-section at 2 o'clock. That's when we'll have the baby." So you can prophesy when the baby's going to come. Now you can prophesy when a person's going to die. Because I remember I was in a hospital a couple of months ago, and a lady was 94 years old. And the nurses were saying, "Well, we could make it pleasant for her to die this evening." And they wanted to pump her up with morphine. So we got a different type of euthanasia. Now we have assisted suicide. When a person's depressed, that's when he's going to decide to commit suicide. So people in the right mind aren't going to commit suicide. Those who are not in the right mind are really filled with a lot of medication that's numbing them. You could see that happen. So that's what the March for Life is Connecticut March for Life on April 15th this year.
Do you have 3 hours to help save a life? Mark your calendar. So it's going to take 3 hours, or it's just going to hit?
What do you mean for what? For the
On the card it says, do you have 3 hours to help save a life?
Oh yeah.
Join us.
You don't have to be there for 3 hours, but it'll probably take about 3 hours with speakers and so forth by the time you get everybody together. So you have 3 hours to save a life. And that's a good point. If everybody's busy, but busy means be under Satan's yoke. And that means what is your priority? Everybody's busy, but what's your priority? So 3 hours of your life to help save a life. That's a nice model to have. And I hope we're hoping for about 5,000 people. That's of all denominations. It's not a Catholic thing. It's a human thing. It's a life thing, promoting life from the womb to the tomb. So if you can make it, we'd love to see you come here. Any other questions you have for me? Don't make it too hard.
All right. How about, what type of a Catholic are you? A and P.
It depends on what day it is. I could be CE, Christmas and Easter only. You got a lot of those. Then you can be an A and P. When you give out something for nothing, ashes and palms. You can be a CC, a cafeteria Christian or a cafeteria Catholic, where you pick and choose what you want to believe. You don't worry about the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill. You can have abortion anytime. You don't have to worry about the sixth commandment. You can commit adultery anytime. That happened to me with my billboard. I have a billboard on Route 691, and the people called and it said, Father, I had an abortion. Someone else called, Father, I committed adultery. Another one called, I committed adultery. So you had the fifth and sixth commandments right there that were, we call them, are they commandments or are they suggestions? And for most people today, they're not even suggestions. So we call them the ashes and palms when you give something to nothing. The cafeteria Catholics, the CC, who pick and choose what they want to believe, or they could be called
CCC.
Card-carrying Catholics. Those are the ones who go to church. They go to church when they're hatched, matched, and dispatched, when they're baptized, married, and died. But now we're losing those. We're losing a lot of those CCCs because a lot of them aren't getting married in the church, and now a lot of them aren't getting buried in the church. I go to as many funeral homes, or they don't even bother having anything at the funeral home, or they may just have something at the cemetery. So that CCT, the big one, is they're not getting married in the church. I tried to get, somebody called me up to get married on a Sunday, and it was a big wedding, 300 people. And so I went to a parish. I don't have a parish, and I asked the parish priest if I could have a wedding on a Sunday afternoon. I got permission from the bishop, and the priest says, "What are you, crazy? Everybody want to get married on a Sunday." I said, "How many weddings did you have last year?" And he mentioned one. So I had to go to 4 churches before I could rent a church to have the marriage in St. Joseph's in New Britain. And I thank Father Keel and Elaine Boisel for making it easy for me to get have them married there. So that CCC doesn't really work very much because it means, and a lot of kids now aren't even being baptized. So when we talked about hatch, match, and dispatch, baptized, married, and buried in the church, now we find many kids are not being baptized. Most Catholics are not getting married in the church, and very few Catholics are getting buried through the church. I had three funerals in the last 3 weeks. One was in Waterbury, and the father was a member of the church, but the kids weren't. Then I had one in Meriden with an old a woman who used to be my Eucharistic minister, And then I had one in Thomaston, and that was an old parishioner that I knew 60 years ago. So that was the exception of having 3 funerals, and one a week for the last 3 weeks. But I've gone to many places. Father, would you just say a prayer at the funeral home or at the cemetery? So that custom of CCC, card-carrying Catholic, hatch, match, and dispatch. That custom is really, it dawned on me till you brought it up. That's really dying. The beautiful traditions of being baptized, married, and buried through the church is now becoming an endangered species. And that's a good point. I never thought of it that way. But, how do we turn it around? How do we get people to get married, first of all? How do we get them to, really have their kids baptized? I find so many kids now who are, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they've never been baptized. So I got my problem. What's your answer? Since you got all the questions, what's your answer?
No, for that one, well, I think living among, the older people who are planning their way out, looking to the future, we're doing more pre-planning for their funerals, so that they can come in and they can choose, at the parish, what music they want, what readings they want, because their children have not been to church. They want to have all that done. So for their children, that's the gift they're giving their children, is to have it all bland.
Well, the other thing is they have to pay up front, too. You're not going to rely on the kids to do it. But unless you do say,
that's true.
Unless you put it in your will, I want a mass, I want to be buried through the church, it's not going to happen, because most of the kids, again, don't go to church. So unless the parent,
they don't know what that means. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point. That you got a generation now who don't go to church, and they don't value the value of a funeral. But unless the parent really emphasizes it, and it costs too much, or this or that, that's a good point. That unless an elderly person specifies in her will that she wants a mass.
But then again, the other part is sometimes the families are not, there's no family member living or whatever. So, if they're living in independent living, or they're living in assisted living in that, the parish has volunteers who will go over. They have booklets, and they can choose, and then have it on file.
Yeah. Yeah, like I met somebody in the hospital today. She was laying in the bed, and I said, are you going to go home? She says, yeah. I says, do you have a family? She says, no, I live alone. Now, that's a good example of somebody in the hospital who ends up really, she has to take everything herself, do everything herself, because there's no one to help her. Yeah, that's a good point, that unless the elderly person specifies what she wants, chances are the kid's going to take the easy way out. And that's kind of scary. Good. Okay, any other question?
Well, the other is that Lent is coming.
Oh, yeah. And
or do you forget Valentine's Day? Is that a real true story, St. Valentine? Is that a true saint?
Well, that's an interesting story about Valentine. He was a martyr, and that's where we get the red from, martyrdom, giving up your life for Christ. And a true Valentine's Day is really giving up your life for the person you love. And that was around this time was the mating season for some birds. If some birds came together, there was a mating season. So between the mating season and the martyrdom of St. Valentine, he gave up his life. Love is sacrifice. And Valentine is a wonderful example of somebody who sacrificed his life for his love for God, for Christ. And the birds, the mating birds, was a time of another expression of love through the mating birds. So you took nature and you took a spiritual foundation to where you got Valentine's Day. because I don't get any Valentines, I usually send 2 or 3 to myself so I can feel better about it, just in case. Well, I got people very upset at Mass yesterday. You know, we come to the prayer of the faithful, and I said to them, you got anybody to pray for? And I've been there for about 6 Sundays, probably. And they pray for their mother, they pray for the person sick, they pray for their friends or so forth. So last Sunday I stopped. You know, I've been here for 6 Sundays. Not one of you ever prayed for me. And they're all started. You know, I'm saying Mass for you. Not once you have never mentioned my name. You don't care about this priest. All you care about your own intentions. So I really piled it on. But they... after my father, we'll pray for you again. I said, yeah, before Jesus returns or after. So we had some laughs. But it's true, you know, who do you pray for? It's amazing when we ask for prayers. It's always for their family. You know, it's not for the country. It's not for the patients in the hospital. It's a very narrow area of praying, just for their family, you know. Or my son to come back to church, or the health of my husband, or the health of my grandmother or something. It's people during the prayer of the faithful do not have a Catholic, universal. Catholic means universal. You know, I don't hear them praying for the coronavirus. You know, I do. I don't hear them praying for the fact that every 18 seconds, 3 people overdose of drugs. Every 40 seconds, people commit suicide. We don't, you know, in the prayer of the faithful, we really don't have a Catholic attitude. We have a very parochial attitude. What's just for me? There's one woman, she sits in front, she's always praying for her mother, and you know, which is fine. But isn't there anyone else to pray for also? So very few Catholics are really Catholic. They're very parochial. They're very set in one area, but that's about it. Okay, any other question before you let me go?
Well, do you need the time? I mean, or do you want me to ask questions?
Yeah, one more time. One more question.
All right, so then your mailing just went out. And in your mailing, you're going to be giving the book Lenten Blessings Await.
Say that again. Lenten Blessings Awake?
Lenten Blessings Await.
Okay.
That's by Father Dyka.
Oh, okay.
Dyka. And I have just, in his introduction, he's talking about, like, once a man arrived in heaven and was greeted by St. Peter. They walked down a long corridor with doors on both sides. Each door had a person's name on it. The man stopped when he saw his own nameplate on the door. What's inside that room, he asked. Oh, you don't want to go there, St. Peter answered. It will just depress you. No, the man insisted. I want to see what's in there. Okay, St. Peter said, and as he opened the door inside were beautiful wrapped boxes lined on the shelves. What are they? The man asked. St. Peter explained, these are the blessings and gifts God tried to send you, but you were too distracted to receive them. How often do we get sidetracked by trivial nonsense and miss out on wonderful opportunities as they slip by us? We mistakenly think they'll happen again, but often those chances are here and gone. They knocked, and we missed out on opening the door. Lent is a good time to get out your priority meter and ask yourself, who and what matters most to me?
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, I'll be sending those out to a few people. By the way, if anybody wants that beautiful book, Lenten book, just call me right now and we'll take your name and telephone number. But in the meantime, we have someone else who's called. In fact, we've got 2 other calls. Thanks for calling. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Father Ed.
Hi, Father. It's Donna. How are you?
Oh, good, Donna.
That's great.
What's your wonderful question for me, or what questions do I have for you? How's my brain food coming along?
Oh, it's coming along very well. We wanted to talk to you about green tea and all the beautiful things that it can do for you. We have this interesting tea that it is developing. It's coming to market. It's going to be called Brain Food. But right now it's a proprietary blend of green tea and some other ingredients, and it's only available to our nutritional and pharmacy patients that we consult at home. So if anybody wants it, they have to get us they have to do some consulting nutritionally because it's very important, your nutrition. It's the best thing you can do, best thing you can give yourself is a good, healthy nutrition.
Okay, well, you say nutrition and tea. What combination is that now? Explain that.
Tea is extremely good for you, especially green tea. It does, some people say, oh, it has caffeine in it and things like that, but it only has a very small amount of caffeine. And the caffeine in tea, in green tea especially, is very unique in the sense that it gives you energy but doesn't give you the jitteriness that coffee does. And it's healthy for you. So it has a lot of good nutritional health properties to it. So everybody should drink some.
And you're saying it's a brain food. What does that mean?
Green tea naturally helps your brain. It helps you have better cognitive function, so you're going to think better. We have a proprietary blend with green tea and some other ingredients, and it's been proven with the people that we have had using it that it has increased their mental acuity. They can think better. They have more energy. And actually, some people have fought colds with it. It helps them to fight off colds and the flu and things like that. It's just a really good thing for you to have.
It's also heart healthy?
Yeah, very heart healthy.
Oh, okay.
Even decreases your cholesterol.
Decreasing my cholesterol, okay. Will it decrease my belly?
Yes, it'll even decrease your belly.
Good. I got to work on that too, okay.
That's good. That's
Okay,
good.
what question do you have for me before I let you go?
What's your biggest nutritional problem that you have in your lifestyle or in your life? The biggest problem that you have nutritionally?
I mean, because physically, you mean?
No, anything really. I was thinking more of a problem with eating certain types of foods, or you can't find certain type of foods, or you just don't understand something. What's the biggest obstacle to eating well?
My sweet tooth. My sweet tooth. I like sweets too much, and then I tried today. I tried to be good. I didn't have any sweets, but it's kind of an addiction. That's a good point. You know, I have one cookie, but then I want to have another cookie. Then I have another cookie, and then I want to have some ice cream. So it's kind of a snowball go down a hill. Once the snowball going down, I find it. Well, I'm addictive. I got an addictive personality. I don't have one bag of peanuts. I have to knock off 2 or 3. So the sweet over sweetness. I guess maybe because I'm such a dull person, I need to sweeten up. But that would be my nutrition problem. I don't eat a lot. I try to eat 3 meals. But what I do, I noticed on the scale this morning, I was 172, and I usually was 171. And so I just thought about how much sweets did I have in the day before, and I had extra sweets that I usually don't have. So you got to pray for my soul, so my soul won't be as sweet as it is. So, but other than that, okay. Any other question? All right.
That's it. That's it for today.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for calling, and we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Father.
And I hope your hair turns out well Friday.
Yes, I do too.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of me.
Thanks. Take care.
God bless you, Father. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Father Ed.
Hi, Father. This is Elaine calling. How are you?
Good. Thank you for waiting. We had quite a few calls tonight.
Okay, I noticed that. You're busy.
All right.
I wanted to share something with your viewers. With Lent coming up in a few weeks, there's an activity that I'd like to share, and possibly people would like to attend. It's the Relics of the Passion, and it's a presentation, and it's going to be at St. Joseph Church in New Britain on Tuesday, March 3rd from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And it's a Lenten evening with a rare encounter of 9 holy relics related to the Passion of Christ. It's a powerful 1-hour program of music and meditation with an opportunity for veneration. And I just thought, so many times there's really not an opportunity during Lent for any kind of a meaningful activity. So I thought I would just share this, and hopefully people can attend.
Well, give me the date again so I could write it down. If I'm free, I'd love to go.
Okay, it's Tuesday, March 3rd.
Tuesday, March 3rd. Okay.
Right, from 6:30 to 7:30
Where?
at St. Joseph Church in New Britain.
Okay. Now, where'd you get the relics? That's interesting.
There's an organization that does it. I think it's called Crucified Heart, and they've done this program a few years ago in one of the other churches, and my coworker had attended and thought it was such a meaningful and a personal experience for her that she sought out the person, whoever was in charge, and made the connection. So I don't really have the real specifics, and I could get it for you if you wanted. But I'm told by other people that have attended that it's very powerful, and it's a really good Lenten experience.
Good. So that's St. Joseph's Church, 6:30 on March 3rd.
Correct.
That's it. Good. Okay. If I can, that's what day is that again?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday. Well, that's a good day for me. I'm sure by that time I've been going to the hospital on Sundays and Mondays, and on Wednesdays I have mass in prison. So that Tuesday is I'm open there to pay my bills and clean up my room. So that I'll mark that
If
down.
people want, more information, they can go onto Facebook, onto Divine Providence Parish, and there's a link to the Archdiocese webpage, and it's got a lot more information about the program.
Again, where on Facebook? Divine?
If they go into Divine Providence Parish, that's our overall parish.
And do they have to say New Britain?
No, it'll just say Divine Providence Parish. Well, it might say New Britain.
Yeah, because there may be other parishes that are divine.
And then there'll be a link to the Archdiocese webpage. And they've done a really nice presentation on Facebook.
Oh, good. Okay, again, that's March 3rd, 6:30 at St. Joseph's Church in New Britain on South Main Street.
Correct.
Right. You haven't moved, so you're still on South Main Street.
No,
Good.
we're still there.
Oh,
Yep.
good. Okay, thanks a lot for calling.
Okay, Father, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's interesting. The relics of the cross at 6:30 at March 3rd at St. Joseph's Church. So that's we only have about 5 minutes left. So if anybody else is out there would like to call in, we're talking about suffering when we started, and what sufferings are there? Well, there's a lot of sufferings going on in China and all over the world with the coronavirus that keeps escalating. It's escalating. I think I heard it was 40,000 Adventists. People on cruise ships. That's, you feel bad. There's over 100 people affected by it on cruise ships. Now, how do they get help? Where's the doctor? Or where's the medicine? And how do you handle that? We had the American who died in China, first American that passed away. But remember, a lot more people die from the flu than right now, unless it really escalates, the coronavirus. And a lot more people die every 40 seconds, somebody commits suicide. So before this show is over, just say there'll be at least 60 people who will have committed suicide. And every 19 seconds, 3 people overdose with drugs. So just imagine how many people overdose with drugs during this 55-minute show that we're showing with you. And again, if any of you have anything to add, any suffering, any question, I've got an answer for everything. But I read to you here's a prayer of a young person. Lord, give me your love, for sometimes people reject me, for I am tempted to hate. Lord, give me your strength, for sometimes situations get tough, and I'm tempted to quit. Lord, give me your courage, for sometimes pressure gets heavy, and I'm tempted to give in. Lord, give me your forgiveness, for sometimes I fail to do what I should, and I need your healing. Lord, give me yourself, for my heart was made for you, and I will not rest until I rest in thee. An anonymous, a beautiful, beautiful anonymous writer on this. Forget about it. There's this legend about a little Indian boy. You may be familiar with it, but it deserves to be repeated over and over because it carries such an important message. One day, the boy found an eagle's egg. He placed it in a nest of chicken eggs. Before long, an eagle hatched with a brood of chicks, and grew up with them. The eagle scratched in the dirt for seeds, the way the chicken did. The eagle cackled the way the chickens did. And the eagle trashed his wings and flew a few feet off the ground, the way a chicken did. Then one day the eagle looked up into the clear blue sky. There he saw a most marvelous sight, a magnificent bird soaring majestically through the sky on two big golden wings. The little eagle breath was taken away excitedly. It called out to the older chicken nearly, "What kind of bird is this? What kind of bird is this?" And that's an eagle, said the older chicken. But forget about it. You couldn't soar like that in a million years. It is the same disheartening message that the world gives us today. It tells us, forget about Jesus Christ and his teaching. He is the Son of God. His word was totally different from our world. You could never be like him. You could never soar the way he did. Not a million years. But Jesus gives us a totally different message. He says in the Gospels, I'm telling you the truth. Whoever believes in me will do what I do. Yes, he will do even greater things. You know, we are dust, stardust. We are golden. And we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. A soul, a spark of never-dying flame that separates man from all the other beings on earth. You know, one of the things I find people don't know their potential. I was talking to someone, I said, you know, you haven't used 90% of your talents. And she laughed at me. But then I started investigating and realized that she was a woman of tremendous talents that she never used. In fact, most of us do not use 90% of our talents. We only use about 10% of them. We have no idea of the things that we could do. How many people never knew that they could be artists and they become great artists? How many people knew they could be pianists or vocalists or a violinist, and all of a sudden they never thought they could do? I know in my own case, I never thought that I could do a TV show because I never did one. I never thought I could write a script for a 30-second meditation. And when God puts you into situations, take advantage of it. Okay, we see that we're getting close to the end of the show, so I'd like you to end up praying with me. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, a Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Thank you so much for watching tonight. And if you'd like to call me on my cell phone, 860-335-2342. 860-335-2342. God bless you and good night.